I'm hard pressed to see how we're not at 100K by the end of calendar 2024. And I think this cycle takes us to 200 or 300K. And maybe at that point in time, we're a little overbought and, we come back around, come back down a bit. Well, I don't think anybody's missed the boat. I mean, I think we're still very much in the early days, and it's going to 10X and that's going to 10X again. So, I mean, from an investing point of view, you don't want to miss something that's going to go up 100X and maybe 1,000X if you talk 15, 20 years out.
Popular investment manager and sound money advocate Lawrence Lepard has one of the most bullish predictions for Bitcoin. Not only does Larry, as he is popularly known, agree with Michael Saylor that Bitcoin will someday hit a staggering $8 million per coin in the near future, but he also believes the massive gains will continue until Bitcoin's price is at least 1,000 times higher than it is today. In a recent interview with Jamie Curie on the Crypto Nutshell channel, Larry shares a series of super bullish price predictions on Bitcoin and explains why he is so confident about the leading cryptocurrency.
Look, the major thing that you want to look for in the venture capital business is Gene Kleiner was the guy who told me this, or told it, not me, but he told it to people. He wrote about it. Is what he called dogs eating the food. You want to look for something that is being used and there are more people using it every day. Okay, you want to look for obvious growth trends, and if you see an obvious growth trend, then you can extrapolate it out and say, if something is growing, all other things being equal, it's going to continue to grow. And one of my big winners in the internet space was a company called Netcom, which we put like $5 million into at a $15 million valuation. It got sold to AOL for, I don't know, $280 million or something. I mean, we made, $100 million. That's something that was crazy. When we were into Netcom, it was a dial-up service in the Silicon Valley. And the guy started it out of his garage, and he had people literally just dialing into his server, which was then connected to a bigger server, which then talked to the internet. And he was charging him $20 a month. And, when I found the guy, I can't remember the exact numbers, but he had, 500 subscribers, but he was adding 150 every month, and the 150 was going up. And so it was kind of like, holy shit. And before we know, I mean, by the time he was done, he had 200,000 subscribers. So, that kind of growth is just, that's evidence that something's working. And you're seeing the same thing going on in Bitcoin, by the way, right? I mean, there's just enormous, adoption and growth and increased users, and ETFs are bringing all that. Let me tell you about a couple that I missed, all right? So Amazon comes along and Google comes along. And when I started my own fund, the first thing I did was, okay, I'm going to start looking for growth at a reasonable price. And I found it in India. We were doing cell phone providers that were growing 40% a year and trading at 3 times earnings. So that worked. Okay. But I was looking in the US as well. And I saw that Amazon was growing. And I also saw that, Google was growing. But in both cases, particularly in the Amazon case, they weren't making any money. And so I was putting my old finance lens on it and saying, well, yeah, it's growing, but they're growing revenues, but they're making it up and losing money and making it up in volume. And they were able to do it because of ZIRP. Okay. In other words, their cost of capital was incredibly low. I mean, Jeff Bezos basically destroyed middle and Main Street American retailers because he had no cost of capital. And so he could, and he went around buying, he paid tons of money for warehouses and warehouse picking and all that. He could foresee where we were going, and he didn't have any cost of capital. It was stunning. But he wasn't making any money. And what I didn't realize is he was running the old monopolist play, which is to lose money until you've got a monopoly, and then you can increase your prices and make a ton of money. And so I didn't realize that was the game he was playing. And so I thought it was a flawed strategy, and so I didn't invest in it. And I deeply regret that. The one with Google was similar, but they weren't doing it so much on free capital. What I couldn't understand about Google was I used Google, but I never clicked through on the ads. I thought to myself, how does this, this doesn't make sense. I mean, these ad people are getting duped. I mean, they're paying a ton of money to put ad at Google and to get placements on Google, but it's not working. Now, I was wrong about that, but because of that, I couldn't see it. But they were both very similar kind of network businesses that got more valuable as more users joined, okay? So I'm not going to make the mistake, a third time. So when I saw Bitcoin and I realized what it was a network of money, and it was growing, steadily and exponentially. and that everyone needs money, and that it is, truly the best form of sound money. I mean, as Saylor and Preston have said recently, there's no deflection in it. There's just 21 million of them, and that's it. It's just, to me, it's such an obvious, clear bet.
Larry predicts Bitcoin will finally hit the much anticipated six figures before the end of the year. In his words, it's hard to imagine anything that could stop Bitcoin from hitting $100,000 by the end of 2024. Larry predicts even higher prices in 2025. At the peak of the cycle next year, the Sound Money Advocate predicts Bitcoin could get as high as $200,000 to $300,000 per coin. Within the next 10 to 15 years, Larry believes Bitcoin could be trading as high as $8 to $10 million per coin. He also talks about recent price movements and why prices are not higher than they are at the moment. Here are more clips from the interview.
And, you said price predictions. I mean, I have no idea where it's going tomorrow, or I don't know where it's going to be at the end of the year, although I'm guessing maybe 100K or something. But, I'm absolutely certain this is going to be 200K, and then someday it's going to be $1 million, someday it's going to be 2 million, someday it's going to be 8 million per coin. I'm talking that. Because that's just the natural progression of, the growth of a network. And so, that's why I'm pounding the table just to, and people getting into it, they think, well, I'm paying too much. I have a friend who's very, very wealthy, and, he knows my average cost is quite low, and, you just can't bear to pay 60 or 70 grand. I said, look, it doesn't matter. I paid, I don't know, whatever I paid. In the thousands for probably as an average. But, Max Kaiser was paying $2, and I don't regret Max. I just recognize that, someday my average cost is going to seem incredibly cheap to somebody who's paying $2 million a coin. So it's just, it's Saylor's point. It's going up forever, Laura. Either decide, you're going to buy it eventually. People don't realize that. Everybody's going to buy this eventually. I don't think anyone realizes, or I don't think a lot of people realize that. So you might as well buy it now versus waiting and having to pay a lot more for it in the future. Bitcoin's a strange beast, and predicting the price moves day to day, week to week, month to month, who the hell knows? And it surprises you almost, at least in my experience. I've been watching for a long time. I just dollar cost average and HODL. I don't sell. So the ETFs are an enormous positive development. They really are. They give a lot of money access to the asset, and even today, the assets, I think it was down to 60, high 50s, 60. Look, it's still up, I don't know, 40% for the year. It's not like it's it's not like a disaster. A year ago, this was 30, and half a year before that, it was 16. So, it's still kind of working, and it's going to continue to work. And so, I think the short-term swings aren't that relevant. I don't know why the price is where it is today. I don't really watch that sort of stuff that much. Certainly the Mt. Gox coins are a possibility. I would think, I've noticed there've also been a lot of hedge funds that are short it. I think they're going to get their faces ripped off. I also think that one explanation that was given to me, and I think this might make some sense, is that, the halving just occurred not that far ago, a couple months ago, and the miners, their reward was cut in half. And some of them had Bitcoin on their balance sheets, and some of them probably aren't making much money right now or having cash flow issues. And so I think the miners are probably in a situation where the marginal ones are having to sell the coins they've got to keep the lights on. And they're just hoping that the price is going to go higher, but it hasn't yet. And, and we saw the hash rate dip a bit, not hugely, but somewhat. I would have thought it would have gone down more. And I'm guessing that there are probably some miners that are operating uneconomically right now that haven't quite thrown in the towel yet. They're leaving the machines on because they're thinking, well, it's going to come back up. And until we get kind of that capitulation, and they say, oh, fuck it, I'm throwing in the towel, I'm turning these machines off. Hash goes down a bit more, and then at that point in time, it can come out of the blue. We all know how this thing happens. The thing that's so wild about this asset is the way that it can really move and move fast. And that's why I say, like the hedge funds that are short this stuff, they're about to have a deeply religious experience. They don't understand. They don't understand that this shit can go up, 50, 100, 150% in months, and so, you're going to see those shorts are going to get covered so goddamn fast. And, and so, I'm kind of, I know Samson, I really like him a lot. He says $1 billion, within a year. I sure hope he's right. I don't think he is, but you know, I'm hard pressed to see how we're not at 100K by the end of calendar 2024. And I think this cycle takes us to 200 or 300K.